Hey, what's up, guys? Week 17 podcast previewing the Eagles game this week. We're going to get into a lot of topics about the stuff moving forward. We're going to start out talking about Sean Payton and Dennis Allen and what the future holds for those two people. Could Sean come back, or is this Dennis's team moving forward? We're going to get into some of the quarterback situations. Where does Derek Carr fit in? Could he be a factor in this? He did start out his career with Dennis Allen in Oakland, so there's a little bit of a connection there. And we're going to touch on a whole lot more topics. How do they stop Jalen Hurts? Is Marshawn Lattimore going to play? And what is the best road city to go to for a fan experience? We are coming to you from the Better Call BADEAUX podcast studio, and we are presented by Hardhide Ponchatoula Strawberry Whiskey. And that drink is an 86 proof blend of 3-year-old wheat bourbon, American light whiskey, and fresh Ponchatoula strawberries. It is not for the thin-skinned. Look for it in your favorite bars, restaurants, and stores. And if you need legal help with any of the following: car wrecks, offshore injuries, 18-wheeler collisions, Maritime Jones Act, hurricane and storm claims, you better call BADEAUX at 504-323-7777 or 985-303-7777 for your free consultation and case review, BADEAUXlaw.com. And make sure you check out our friends, as always, Firehouse Subs, Veterans Boulevard location, some of our favorite people in the city because they do great things for the city. All right, let's get into the show. Hey, thanks for joining us. Happy New Year. NewOrleans.Football podcast. As we said at the start, coming to you from the Better Call BADEAUX podcast studio and presented by Hardhide Ponchatoula Strawberry Whiskey. That's in Walmart now, so go check them out. Shout out to Hardhide for doing big things, making big moves. Here with Mike, previewing the Eagles game. This might be the biggest game of the season in some ways. It feels like it, even outside of the playoffs. Like, and let's start there. Like, how insane is it that this sad limping season is still alive in January, meaningful football in 2023 to start the year? That's unreal. It's kind of fake, but it's still real in some sense. But this feels like kind of the biggest game of the season.
Well, I'm still so mad at everything Tampa Bay has done to the Saints this year. Like the game itself that the Saints lost to Tampa Bay, and then like, hey, wait a minute, if they can't beat Arizona with Trace McSorley, maybe the Saints will have hope. Now the hope feels very faint. But look, show me something. Kevin made a great point on Tuesday. He's like, the Saints have had a lot of wins, but no signature wins. This would be a signature win. It's a long shot, whether they're facing Jalen Hurts or Gardner Minshew. It's a team they've struggled to overcome. It's a team, that has their draft pick next year and has CeeDee Deuce. And look, I mean, there's a lot of giants the Saints could slay with a win, and we're only talking about it because they finally won 2 in a row. So look, they earn the right for us to talk about a matchup for a change. We don't realistically think they're in the playoffs. We don't realistically think they're in the same class as Philadelphia. But go ahead and do something you haven't done all season. I'll be here watching.
Yeah, the problem is that they're probably going to have to try to beat Philadelphia in this explosive offense, very likely with Daniel Sorensen starting at safety this week. It doesn't look like Marcus May is going to play. Now, we're recording this Friday before Friday's practice access, so maybe there is the hero's return. But even if he does play, it's less than 100%. And this is the game where you need your safeties. They are an explosive offense. They're probably the most explosive team the Saints have played all season. They struggled against Minnesota a little bit with that aspect of the game. They struggled against Cincinnati in that aspect of the game a little bit. They've gotten better in the secondary, I think, as the season has progressed. And May has been a big part of that. His ascension kind of over the last few weeks was one of the quiet, positive storylines for a team that doesn't have a lot of them. Doesn't look like he's going to play. So I think that's going to be really hard for him. But it's not even really about that before you can even get there. And again, maybe Jalen Hurts plays, maybe he doesn't. But I think it's still worth a conversation, even with that little bit of unknown of just this style of offense, because they are kind of, you're talking about Ghost and Giants and having to slay something. They are kind of the face.
Their nemesis.
They are the face of Dennis Allen's biggest weakness, and that's stopping mobile quarterbacks. And that's going to be a huge issue for him this week. And you asked Ryan Nielsen a question this week about that, and he gave what I thought was probably the most revealing and interesting answer of the week of access. And he just said, every single play, we got to approach it like it's QB draw because he's going to make one read and he's going to go. And I think that makes it really hard to play defense.
My number one takeaway from Ryan Nielsen's answer was, are the people in charge of Taysom Hill listening to this, including Sean Payton? Because we've said for years, why wasn't that the Taysom Hill offense? Ryan Nielsen was just like, what makes him so dangerous is he looks for his first read, and if he doesn't see it, he runs, almost like it was a design run play. And we're like,
yeah, do that.
Are you reading out of our this should be the Taysom Hill playbook manifesto that we've co-authored over the years? Anyway, but my second, look, and one of the questions that I asked him was, why does it then become so hard to also defend the running backs in these offense? Because Miles Sanders has run for over 100. They gave up like 250 rushing yards in each of those games too. We saw it in week 1 against Marcus Mariota and Cordero Patterson, which is like the diet right version of the Philadelphia Eagles offense. And it's just driven them absolutely nuts. And Ryan Nielsen said, you don't want to be the picket fence defense that just stands around and isn't aggressive. We've seen that too. We saw that when Deshaun Watson should have thrown a touchdown pass to Amari Cooper when they gave him 7 full seconds in the pocket. And like Carl Granderson was actively just like bouncing around like it was like flag football or something like that. And so, no, they have not solved this.
By the way, he could have stood in that pocket for 14 seconds. There was zero
They were not.
pressure.
They were choosing not
to rush. Zero pressure.
Which is like, you can't do that. Now, obviously, Granderson got a very important sack on the very next drive, or in the fourth quarter. And I talked to guys about that all week. It's mixing patience with aggression. And look, they did a pretty good job against Deshaun Watson. He only slipped out on him once for that touchdown. But Deshaun Watson isn't Jalen Hurts. We could dissect the Jalen Hurts match. I wish this was an 11-win Saints team against an 11-win Eagles team, and this was the storyline of the season. When the schedule came out, this felt like this game might be the biggest game of the entire season, and that has been the thing they absolutely need to overcome. We might be wasting our breath if they decide to save Jalen Hurts for another week because they only need to win one more game. They might win this game with Gardner Minshew at quarterback. But, yeah, if Jalen Hurts is at quarterback, Dennis Allen has been under fire for a million things. Dennis Allen, the great defensive coordinator version, this is probably the thing that has kept him up at nights more than anything else before all these new issues entered his plate this year.
Showing some problem solving against Hurts would go a long way toward him kind of.
There's a million reasons why this game would go a long way towards. The whole organization. Look, we've debated a million times whether they should want a higher draft pick in round 2 or whether they should want to wipe the egg off their face from making that trade with Philadelphia. But I can guarantee you that everyone sitting in like the front office box during this game will be like, do not let Philly beat us and then get to pick 8 spots higher in the draft because of it.
Well, for them, absolutely. This is huge for them. This is it's on their reputation, so it matters, and the optics matters for them. We've talked about that, though. I think practically speaking, if you aren't making the playoffs, you're always better off having a higher draft pick. But
there's a lot of symbolism on this field.
Yes, there's a lot of symbolism on the field this week.
Everybody says there's no such thing as moral victories. This would be a moral victory, even if they don't make the playoffs.
I think it's going to be the May factor. I think is the biggest thing in this game, 100%. Especially if Hurts plays. Minshew's good at scrambling too, but it's not even comparable. It's a completely different type of player. But the thing with not having May is that I think in a game like this, if you're playing zone without him, you don't have the same coverage over the top, and there's a major exposure there of having a play bust or something go sideways on you. But you need to be looking at Jalen Hurts because if he gets out and runs, you need to be able to crash down on him. Now, if you're playing man and you got your back to him, he's going to slip out and he's going to take off. He's going to run on you. So it's kind of a catch-22 a little bit without having strong safety play. Maybe PJ Williams gets out there and plays a little bit, but he's coming back from a knee injury. He's been practicing and in knee brace. He's not going to have the same level of range. So even if he does play a big role, that's an issue. I don't think you put JT Gray in there. I think it's going to be Daniel Sorensen. And he played well last week, but playing well in sub-zero temperatures with snow on the ground when it's not as explosive and people don't have the same footing and you're not running as fast and everything's kind of condensed by the atmosphere, it's easy to look good there. In this game, it's going to be 60 degrees in Philly. You're against an explosive offense. Yeah. Both quarterbacks like to go down the field. I think it's going to be really tough for them to be strong in secondary.
Look, they haven't faced they faced Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase, but they haven't faced a duo like this. They are just lighting it up. really Philadelphia has no weaknesses. I thought, oh look, Jordan not I'm rooting for a player with a concussion, but like I thought, oh well, if Jordan Davis doesn't play because he left last week's game with a concussion, maybe that means Philadelphia could be susceptible to the run game, but he's going to play this week. There's no obvious places where the Saints have an edge on Philadelphia. It's a great team. I think they could go really far this year.
This is an important game for I think Marshawn helps you a lot in a game like this, but I also think if he doesn't play, it's a game where if they continue to have success and you know, I kind of put success asterisks, you know, around it because I think Paulson Adebo's had too many penalties and that's got to get cleaned up. And that's been a huge issue for him. But I do think if they continue to have success, I think they've been successful for quite a while in the secondary. Like Marshawn's injury hasn't become the story that some of the other injuries have become in the past. Like they've kind of overcome that. They've remained strong there. They've played good defense. If they continue to play well in the secondary without him in this game, it's going to kind of create, maybe you're looking down the road and you're wondering, all right, we're super weak here on the defensive line. Is a cornerback expendable? Any one of the three? Can we trade one of them to get a draft pick and maybe now we draft a defensive end? And I would think that maybe anything is on the table. If they close out the season strong and they're able to succeed without him, I do wonder if you look at it like a Brandon Cooks type situation where you say, do we take a piece from here to make this piece better?
Jimmy Graham trade.
Yeah, because, okay, we got Mike Thomas now. Can we take a step back and you know, shift resources? Obviously, that backfired on that trade, the pick they made, but Stephon Anthony ended up being. But it is something when you're kind of looking at a team with limited resources with a lot of issues that they got to fix. And I do believe they want to stay competitive in the NFC South. I don't think they're going to try to dial all the way back, but it could be a situation where is Adebo available? Is Taylor available? Is Marshawn available? I think if you finish strong, anything's on the table.
And speaking of our conversation with Ryan Nielsen, he lavished Paulson Adebo with praise in addition to Alontae Taylor. So even though we've seen the penalties that have been absolute killers from Adebo, they like everything else that they're seeing from him. And Dennis Allen praised him in the same breath when he was asked an Alontae Taylor question. So they like both those guys a lot.
I'm still high on Adebo's upside. I'm disappointed in this season though. Just keeping it 100% real. I expected a whole lot more from him this year. His offseason was crazy. People in the building are still talking about how good he looked this offseason. And then it didn't quite translate onto the field. He got hurt. He got setback after setback. I think he's been playing better as of late as far as the coverage, but it's almost become a cliche the way they end all these games. It's like they go up, they have the late game Adebo penalty, they give up a touchdown, and then it's the final drive. And do they live or do they die? And it's kind of like the same chain of events every single time.
You just let me know what's going to happen in Philly. Like they're going to play the game of their lives for 55 minutes, and then AJ Brown's going to tear down the field.
Every time the game ends, it's like, damn, you're rebooting this again. Like it's another reboot of this movie. Like just keep, it just feels like the same thing every single week.
Major League 2.
Yeah.
Die Hard 2.
So yeah. All right. Talking about some of the access. I want to play the clip here of Pete Carmichael talking about just why they didn't get Taysom Hill as involved. I know this is kind of like a week-old story, but we just kind of got this access and we heard from it. So here's Carmichael explaining why they were unable to get Taysom Hill involved earlier in last week's game.
As a staff, something that we had talked about was he had a few snaps there where he was in the backfield, but given the weather conditions and everything, we wanted to see, throw some different personnel groupings out there, a few that included him as well, and really kind of see what we were getting from them defensively based on, not only what their Taysom plan was, but also because of the weather conditions. And so, we threw some different things out there and then once we felt like we had a good beat, obviously got to Doug and Zach and, their thoughts of, hey, start firing out the Taysom run plays.
All right, so first takeaway from this, I understand what he's saying about putting stuff in the game to have tells later on. So you see how they adjust. Sean used to do that all the time, and he would make adjustments off their adjustments. Same philosophy. The one thing I don't understand, if you are making adjustments off the other team's adjustments, why can't Taysom run the ball? And he either succeeds or fails.
Learn what they do on that.
And then you make the adjustment based off that. I can't get my head around why it would take 26, 27 minutes to put the ball in his hands. They ran 20 plays before they gave the ball to Taysom. How much adjustment do you need to see? And he was talking about 2 plays earlier in the game where they had Taysom and Alvin in the backfield, and then they shifted over and snapped to Alvin. Taysom becomes a fullback. And so it's really 2 plays. You saw how they adjusted before you ran the ball. So after those 2, why doesn't he get the ball? It's a piece of that explanation made sense to me, but the totality of it kind of has me scratching my head a day later. And I thought about it a lot, and I just cannot get my head around the idea of we can't give him the ball until we run 20 plays in this game.
Now, look, there was also an obvious factor Pete didn't mention in that answer, but and I wrote about this after the game, they let the wind get in their heads so much. When the wind was at their back, they called, I forgot the number now. Was it 8 pass plays out of their 15 plays in the first quarter?
Yeah.
They still thought they could pass the ball. They couldn't because 2 of those snaps bounced off Andy Dalton's hands. One of them bounced off Juwan Johnson's hands. I mean, it just wasn't easy to catch the ball in those conditions, even if the wind is at your back. So they did a lot of things wrong in the first quarter. Now, the only thing I'll say is I think Taysom Hill would have gotten the ball sooner than 3 minutes left in the second quarter, but Cleveland had a 10-minute drive that took up most of the second quarter. So Taysom Hill should have got his first carry with 9 minutes left in the second.
Yeah, it's still exactly. 20 plays. Way too many plays.
So that I'm just trying to explain it. Everything else is confounding. I mean, everybody, the Vegas, us, the column I wrote 3 days before the game, Joe fan, anyone who's ever watched football, anyone who's ever heard of Taysom Hill was like, "Oh, this is gonna be a great Taysom Hill game." It makes no sense. Makes no sense.
Yeah, people on the team, everybody thought it was going to be more, and then it just took so long to get into it. It was extremely surprising. That was the moment for me where I kind of looked at them, and that was the most confused I've been with their offense. I was, if they hadn't won that game and they went through it like that, I was prepared to start writing changes need to be made. I still think changes need to be made, but that was like a boiling point.
The only thing that saved him is that Cleveland was dumber.
Yeah.
Nick Chubb was a battering ram. Now the Saints did a really good job against Nick Chubb by holding him to 4 yards per carry or whatever they did. But they should have run Nick Chubb 15 more times and said, try to stop it. Look what Atlanta did late in the game once they wore the Saints run defense down. I have no idea why Cleveland was thrown as much as they were. They were even worse. And that's why the Saints won.
Isolated, I think it was a good win. You go into a game, you make adjustments, you find a way to win. But just, looking at the whole entire season, it was just kind of like, what are you guys doing? The other thing I was thinking about today, I saw a stat, and it just showed that Philadelphia has gone for it more than any other team on 4th down, and it's just kind of representative of how the league has changed. And my first thought was this is why teams have offensive head coaches, because they make decisions like this and they go for it, and it's more modern and it allows you to be more aggressive, and they think about it this way. Then I continued to think about it, and if you are a team with an extremely good defense and a defensive identity, why don't those types of teams take more risks? Because it seems like if you have a good defense, that is kind of a way to offset having a mediocre offense. You could take more risks on 4th downs. If you fail, your defense saves you from it. Yeah. But it just somehow, for some reason, it makes everybody more conservative. And I think the biggest, if you're going to make a case against Dennis Allen's Saints team and why everything needs to change, it is because they are at shocking levels of conservative play on every single thing you look through. It's 4th down attempts, punting choices, all this stuff. It's really extremely driven through the idea of trying to score,
choosing Andy Dalton over Jameis Winston,
scoring I don't want to say it's their identities. We're going to try to score the least amount of points, but make the fewest amount of mistakes as possible, and that leads to low scoring games and trying to grind it out and win. Yeah. Where I feel like if you believe in your defense, and it seems like he does because that's the whole philosophy, you should push on the gas a little bit more and say, okay, Andy Dalton doesn't complete this pass, my defense is going to save it. And for some reason, it just manifests in the complete opposite way.
And I mean, look, that's true sort of league-wide. A lot of times you think the defense-heavy teams are also the run-heavy teams. I kept comparing them to saying their model was the Tennessee Titans, and now, it's backfired on the Titans this year too. I got my Randall Cunningham here. I got to do an interview with Seth Joyner this week. This was my team growing up. This was my team. And it was the Eagles defense with Reggie White and Buddy Ryan as head coach, and that was absolutely his philosophy. He basically, it was the worst run offense you've ever seen. He basically told Randall Cunningham, make me 5 plays. That's all I need. And it was just chaos, but it was fun to watch because the belief was the defense will always bail us out. See, there's a lot of truth to that. Like, if you really believe in your defense,
that was 40 years ago. Though,
yeah, why isn't the offense? Well, they didn't win either. It didn't work for them, unfortunately. Buddy Ryan got run out of the league as a head coach, but it was fun to watch. But look, all these conversations boil down to one thing: the offense The offense has been a huge letdown this season. It's been a huge letdown. You could say it for a number of reasons, but we've been flummoxed by their use of Taysom Hill. We've been 5 times as flummoxed by their use of Alvin Kamara. It's been wrong. It's and Pete Carmichael admits it's been wrong, but we have not. We've seen tweaks and innovations that have improved some of the early season issues, especially on defense, missed tackles, some of the penalties. We have not seen tweaks and innovations that have solved their biggest shortcomings on offense.
I said this a few weeks ago. Their identity is what it is, but their identity doesn't fit their personnel at all. You don't have the power back. You can't run this type of offense without a power back. Alvin Kamara is not a power back. And it's a shame that he's averaging 3.9 yards per carry and he's not getting any passes, but like he does not fit the identity of what they want to do. They got players, they went out, they got all these wide receivers. It started out like, all right, we're going to, it was probably some run, but it was, let's throw off the run and go down the field. And then it turned into, we're going to, pack it in and act like we got Jerome Bettis back here, and they don't. And that's not the style of football they should play. So whatever they do next year, they need to figure out what they want to be and then get the players that fit it. And if it's this style of offense, then you need a different type of running back. If it's going to be, throw down the field, explosive plays, then go to that and get the personnel to fit it and buy into it. But you need to have the right players for the philosophy. And I feel like that was the biggest shortcoming of the season, is that those two things never coalesced to make a whole that made sense. And it's like they're just trying to fight their way through this with the wrong guys. And it doesn't work. And that's what makes it so hard to watch.
Yeah.
Like the Drew offense was frustrating to watch, especially at the end. Like they couldn't throw the ball down the field. There was all this stuff, but like the philosophy of the offense still made sense. So you understood why they were doing what they were doing. This season's going to end, and I'm not going to understand like what the offense was supposed to be.
And the flip side of the Kamara coin is you also need to figure out how to do something else with Kamara. And one obvious solution that Kevin brought up and you wrote about it in great detail is, fine, make him a slot receiver if the only thing you're going to do with your running backs is power runs. And if you're getting rid of screen passes and tosses, then make him a slot receiver. And they've done that less than ever this year. Their usage of Alvin Kamara hasn't fit what kind of offense they want to be, and it hasn't fit what Kamara does best. It's the biggest indictment of the whole team. After
they signed him to the extension, you can look up the story on NewOrleans.Football. By the way, subscribe to that. That's how we do what we do. You get an extra podcast every week, all of our analysis. NewOrleans.Football/subscribe. Appreciate all the support. Everyone that's already in, and then, join us because the offseason is going to be really interesting. But the story I wrote on there after they signed him was this amount of money makes sense because you not only get a running back, you get a wide receiver to some extent. So you get a little bit of receiver skill and you get a running back. But for a guy that runs between the tackles, he's not a 1,000-yard runner, nor should he be. That's a misuse of him. He's a 1,500 yard a season guy doing all of this stuff, and that's what he should be.
Well, we're talking about coaching, so we probably should have led with this, but you did a members only, you did a column.
Yeah.
It's the story of the week. More smoke, more fire that Sean Payton wants this job. And that is the worst thing that you could do to this fan base, since we know the Saints like the job, not like the job Dennis Allen is doing, but don't blame all the problems of this season on Dennis Allen. And there's every indication they're going to keep Dennis Allen. So whether Sean Payton is using that to keep his name in the news, people around Sean Payton, whether it's a leverage play or whatever, it's not great for Dennis Allen. He's the one who's taking the brunt of those stories. But
it stinks for DA big time. I mean, it's a guy leaves a job and then comes out and goes in the public and creates this atmosphere around somebody that's in a tough situation already. Like Sean or Sean's associates know what the climate is around DA. They know that everybody wants him out of here, that the fans are kind of, that's kind of been their push. And then you dangle Sean out there, and that sucks for him, because if Sean wanted this job, he could just call Mickey and say, I want the job. And they could have a conversation.
Yeah.
They're friends. They golf together. He came and visited at one point this season. Like it doesn't need to be a media event. So that sucks for DA for sure. Nobody's going to feel sympathy for him. I don't think anybody should feel sympathy for him. He's not had, a great season. The expectation was run away with the NFC South, make the playoffs. We laughed at the over-under of 8 wins because, and I don't think it's because anyone's dumb. Like, it's because that's what the talent on the roster said. Vegas somehow saw what we didn't see with in some of the blind spots, but the talent on the roster added health. That's what they should have been. So this season as a whole is a failure. But the story I wrote, is about what I think will happen.
Yeah.
It's not what
not even just think. I mean, informed insight, not just
it's not what should happen.
opinions.
This isn't Nick's opinion. Like there was like most people read it the right way, but I was getting some comments like, how could you think this? I don't think this is what should happen.
None of us
the
are
word
saying
should is
we
in there.
think DA is better than Sean Payton. We would pick DA over Sean Payton. This is when stories like that come out. You know what me and Nick do? We text people. We call people. We've done that all season long. We have some insight. We don't know everything. They keep a lot of things close to the vest, obviously. But that is what you're getting from us is informed insight and like informed opinions, not hot takes.
Yeah, and I'm not saying there's a 0% chance of Sean coming back, but like
it'd be foolish not to consider it if that was it.
It is Sean Payton. Like Sean, like it's any of these situations. You look at him in a a very outsider point of view. It's just like, well, this is better than this, so you do this. Like, and that's a very easy thing to say, but in reality, it's not. Nothing's ever like that. And I just don't think that there's gonna be a decision where Dennis Allen isn't the head coach next year. I just don't think that's how it's gonna play out. And is that the wrong choice? We're gonna find out.
We don't even know if they. Here's the thing, though. We don't. Like you said, if Sean really wanted this, like the stuff going on in the media, there's a number of different reasons. Sometimes where there's smoke, there's fire. But it also is not a Sean Payton has informed the Saints that he would like to come back, and they're telling him, no, we're going to stick with Dennis Allen. It's not even necessarily a choice. We don't even know if Sean wants this job.
But the thing isn't even about Sean. Like people just want DA gone, and like that, I don't think that's going to happen. I just do not believe that is going to happen. And look, here's my opinion. People keep asking me for it. I would not get rid of Dennis Allen unless I had an assurance I could go to something better. I don't just get rid of him to get rid of him. I don't. I think that my path would be, unless you have something clearly, this is 100% what we're doing. This person is bought in to be part of the program for a while, and this is where it goes forward. That is the only way I would make that decision. But I would make that decision for a lot of teams. Like, it is not just about this guy here, Dennis. Like, if I were in the Chargers, I would probably get rid of Staley for Sean. Like, I think a lot of Sean as a coach. That is just my opinion on it. Like, but people don't do things like that. And it is so easy for me to sit in this chair and say, you should fire Brandon Staley, who made the playoffs, for this other guy, no matter what, because he is better for Justin Herbert. Like, that's an easy thing to say. To actually do it is something completely different. But
and look, speaking of Sean Payton, the ultimate free agent head coach, one of the I can sit in my high seat and pick whatever job I want. Put yourself in his shoes. How do you think he's looking at Denver that just fired a coach after 15 games? How do you think he's looking at the Colts, who seem to have an erratic owner that fired their coach on a whim? And
you could have the Colts coaching situation.
Yeah, like if you want to attract a great coach, you have to show that you have reasonable opinions of jobs coaches and fairness in your decisions. We talked about that a lot this season too. So there are a lot of reasons why it just doesn't jive with anything we've heard that the Saints. Look, we just saw the Broncos do that with Nathaniel Hackett. And we also saw a lot of things happen in that Broncos game, including getting crushed by a bad Rams team, including the backup quarterback fighting with an offensive lineman on the sideline. We haven't necessarily seen a lot of that stuff going on with the Saints. Like, I don't want to. We get accused of being Dennis Allen defenders or being in his pocket or anything like that. And I don't have a lot of things. If I was making the this is why Dennis Allen is great at his job argument, there's not a lot you can say that like he's really proven himself this year. But it's really hard to think the Saints are going to pin this season on him and say he's the reason we've collapsed. There are a lot of other reasons why they're a 6-9 team right now. They were a 7-9 team last year, or a 7-8 team last year around this time too, and there's a lot of the same carryover. So I'd be very surprised if they pin this on him.
Yeah, there's a lot. I mean, look, we were beating the drum early about the accountability on some of the stuff. I couldn't stand the fact that he didn't bench anyone for fumbling. I thought someone should have got sat down. Mark, Alvin, anybody. Like, I think anybody should have got sat down at some point for that. I hated the false start penalties. I think that was the fault of him. I think that the loose atmosphere, I don't think he ever found the right
tone.
Number
one for me.
I still don't. And even with some of the stuff like the fumbles and the pressure and all that stuff, like, I don't think that in the atmosphere that there's enough applied pressure. Like, I think when people are fearful, and I've brought up the Patriots on this so many times, I think when Stephen Ridley, loses his job and doesn't get another carry, everybody else notices, and then other guys don't fumble. There is a reason the Patriots historically over a period of time, I don't know if it's shifted over the last couple of years, but there was like a 15-year period where their number of fumbles was significantly lower than everyone else's. And it's because they were scared of the coach. And I don't think you have to be scared of the coach, but I think there has to be some level of, I'm scared of losing my job. I'm scared of losing a role, something. And I don't think he did a good enough job about that. And we'll debate that probably, to what level, whatever. But I think that is a failing of him. There's just a bunch of stuff that I think he's done wrong. You can find a million things that were wrong with how he coached the team this year. The fact is,
late game situations, those are the high profile ones that they talk. I mean,
you got to win those, yeah. And that's something inherent with the culture of the team. And I think maybe they figured something out over the last 2 weeks, but it took way too long to get there. I don't know what the future holds for him if they stick with him. I do think that there's.
We think he's going to stay, and we think there's going to be radical change on offense, whether that means radical change led by Pete Carmichael or a radical change with Pete Carmichael. But he is going to be under the biggest microscope. We haven't covered a team where a coach was listed as number one coach on the hot seat, Vegas odds first coach to be fired. Like, that is what is going to hang over Dennis Allen and this team. Firing a guy after 1 year is rare in the NFL. 2 bad years in a row, like, the odds are against him. He's going to have to take this team to the playoffs next year to save his job, probably. We're going to have to see major fixes on offense, a better approach on offense. We're going to have to see a better approach in the offseason. And we're going to be like, I mean, the level of scrutiny on him from us, from others, from everyone is going to be something we haven't seen around this team since like Ditka, Hazlitt's last year a little bit. That's going to be a new black cloud hanging over this team. Deservedly so.
All the choices, the staff and all that stuff, that is on him. He assembled the staff. He put it together. They're running the offense that he wants to run. Maybe you blame the coordinator, but at some point he could come in and say, hey, let's do this differently. He hasn't done that. So everything that happens is on his watch. It's all his blame. Any failing of Pete Carmichael. And man, I've written exhaustive research pieces about how the offense has failed, the lack of motion looking back over 10 years and how that deteriorated, the usage of Alvin, the 2nd and 10 plays over a historical period. There is a lot of detailed research on our site about how they've really messed up. It's not just an opinion. It is a researched, put together opinion on why we think these things. All that pushes back up to DA. So all that's on him. He gets no pass for anything that happened this year. I think if next season starts out and it's 1-5 or whatever, I think there's a change. I think he gets let go at that point. However, I do think, and they're going to hate this, especially in the YouTube comments, I'm not completely closed off to the idea of them making a home run offensive coordinator hire and getting really good quarterback play somehow, whether it's, I don't know, Derek Carr or somebody. There is a reality where maybe they put things together and they make the playoffs in a very weak division.
Yeah, I don't think he's incapable of doing that. I would never put like incompetence next to his name or like this guy is clearly out of his element. But he also hasn't shown anything that makes him exceptional, and that's what he's going to have to be exceptional next year.
I covered Belichick for 5 years, so it's just always in my head, and I'm not comparing Dennis Allen to Bill Belichick by any means, but you can even look at Cincinnati as an example. But Belichick started 5-11, and then they were calling for his head, and he turned it around and ended up being a really good coach. And he made some insane decisions at the beginning that it looked like, he put it together, and they were good eventually. The next year, Cincinnati, same thing. Like the coach, everyone's like, this is the worst coach in the league. He makes a Super Bowl in a couple of years. I don't think that's the trajectory this team's going to be on, but it's not impossible for someone to start out very unceremoniously. And, the other thing too, I think there's a lot of blame on him about, personnel, having to trade CJ, not keeping it together. There's always a little bit of that backlash though in year one. Any new job, new manager, new CEO, new whatever, there's going to be a couple of people that don't buy in easily. So next year he needs to smooth all that out. He needs to make sure everyone's bought in, everyone's on the same page, that he makes the right offensive coordinator hire, that he gets a quarterback on day one, that he wants to still have the quarterback at the end of the season. He needs to have a clear idea and understanding of what he wants to do. He needs to put that together, and they need to just follow a clear path. I feel like maybe the plan, and again, this goes back to what we were talking about earlier with offensive identity, that it just was never quite fully
and look, remember
cohesive.
what they did in his first month on the job. They tried to pursue Deshaun Watson.
Yeah.
So, they Pete Carmichael wasn't the first choice at offensive coordinator. I mean, everything felt a little reluctant on that side of the ball. That's got to consume them. And it's funny that your two examples were Bill Belichick and Zach Taylor. Bill Belichick, what did he do to turn things around? Oh, yeah, Tom Brady. What did Taylor do to turn things around? Oh, yeah, Joe Burrow.
100%.
But look, there's other guys who've done it without the quarterback.
Let's throw Staley in there too, though. Like I think there are people that can maybe, a situation can save someone sometimes.
Yeah.
And look, I don't know. I don't think those are maybe necessarily great examples. Like I still don't think it makes Staley a great coach. I still think Zach Taylor does things that are crazy sometimes. They're used to shotguns a little bit over the top for me. Like some of the stuff is not quite all the way there.
Ironically, Joe Lombardi's the one taking the most heat there, which is another part of this Saints offense sort of being stuck a couple years behind the curve. But I brought up the quarterback to transition. You mentioned Derek Carr. He was in the news this week. Tom Brady was in the news this week as floated as, hey, there's a scenario where Peyton and Brady come to New Orleans together. Derek Carr himself, but B, is that the move? Are you all in if a Derek Carr type becomes available?
Maybe. It depends.
tough.
It depends on the compensation. It depends on what he needs to be paid. I mean, he's $30 million, 40 over the next 3 years. You can't pay him that. The one thing that I would maybe do with him, like if I could trade Peyton to get the picks to acquire Derek Carr and then you renegotiate his contract, maybe guarantee a little more and lower those base salaries, I would be in on it. Like I would give it a shot, but I don't stop there either. Like if I get Derek Carr, I'm still looking for the next quarterback. But I think he if you brought him in, and it just depends what your goals are. Like if you're screaming rebuild, tear it down, blah, 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 it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense at all. But I think if you are someone that's saying they should keep going for it, try to win the division, you get in the playoffs. There's who are the teams next year? You named Philadelphia. I don't think anyone else you're looking at is a guaranteed this team's going to be good. Minnesota's won 11.
San Francisco never goes away.
Yes, Minnesota's won a lot of last minute games. They'll probably still be in the mix. So, but those are probably the teams. None of those boogeymen are that scary. So either you get into the playoffs or you don't. I think, like I said, with a good offensive coordinator and a solid quarterback, I think you can win this division. Tom Brady's also almost certainly going to be gone. So I would do it. I mean, if you can somehow flip Sean and get the assets, I don't like the idea of using all your draft assets in this year's draft.
If Sean Payton sits out for another year and your first pick is the 41st pick in the draft, and that's what you have to give up to get him, plus paying him the $33 million he's due, it becomes a much harder decision.
And it doesn't even necessarily have to be just Sean. Like if there's some other trade where you get a second round pick, I think Derek Carr is probably a second round pick and some change. That's kind of what the market is shown for these guys, second round pick and then a couple day 3 picks or something like that. If you can get another second somewhere through another trade, it doesn't just have to be Sean, but if that is your only asset, I don't love it because I just don't know that on his own he's the difference maker, and there's so many holes on this team.
He's so tough for me because look, we've had on air and off air conversations about how I am not interested in paying Jimmy Garoppolo $30 million this offseason if that's what he's going to cost. I would if I were the Jets. I would if I were the Titans. I would if I were if I feel like that's my one mistake. I just feel like the Saints, with their cap issue and with their lack of draft picks and with their older roster, I'm just looking at them differently than general overall NFL philosophy. But I would be willing to pay whatever it cost if I had conviction that the guy is my guy for the next 5 years. My only question is I don't have enough. I don't know enough about Derek Carr. I can't decide. If Lamar Jackson, if I just had to pay 2 first-round picks for Lamar Jackson, fine. I don't care who I have to lose in that process. That is rebuilding for me. Quarterback is everything. You will waste 4 first-round draft picks trying to find a quarterback. So if you find your guy and you're like, this is it, even what the Vikings have done with Kirk Cousins, he's probably never been considered a top 10 quarterback, but they just haven't. They've stopped worrying about quarterback and they've gone forward.
He's been legitimately good. He's led how many fourth quarter comebacks?
I don't want to have the 20th best quarterback, but I'll take the 10th best quarterback if it just is okay, fine. Now I don't have to trade 3 firsts to move up in the draft or 3 firsts for Matthew Stafford. If you just get your guy, but I honestly can't sit here and say I have enough conviction on whether Derek Carr's that guy. I feel like the price is going to be too high personally, but I wouldn't I wouldn't kill him for it if they truly loved him for some reason. But then,
I don't think anyone truly loves him. But if you like him, that's enough for me. Like, I don't think anyone getting into the Kirk Cousins business loves Kirk Cousins. They like him and they know, okay, we can do this and then we can do everything else around here. And this isn't going to be a problem. Might not be the solution, but it's not going to be a problem. And if you can get to a point where your quarterback is not a problem and you win a couple games with him, not necessarily win all of them because of him, I think you're in a better situation than most people. Derek Carr might be that. I haven't studied him enough to make an impassioned plea for him. At some point, I'm going to take a look at him. Look, early in his career though, like he was doing enough that I actually thought like there was a chance for him to be like really good. And he's probably been a victim of instability as much as anybody else in the league. And it was kind of one of the things we used to talk about with Jameis early on, is like there was this many offensive coordinators, this much changeover. Like Carr's had production and just a lot of changeover, a lot of, false starts and direction and offensive coordinators and coaches coming and going. And, it's been hard for him. And even a couple of years ago, I mean, he was good again. And then this year it's real down. And, I think it's probably part of the circumstance. There's an alternate reality though, where like Derek Carr goes to a different organization and they're stable. Like let's say Minnesota gets him. I think the view of him is different. And I think people feel stronger about it.
I mean, he feels very much in the Cousins zone.
Like if Cousins became available right now, like and people love to like just hate him. But if Cousins came available right now, like if I were the Saints, I would run and get him because like I know what you can do around him, and he's not going to be a problem. Maybe at some point you aren't going to get enough out of him to feel great about the investment. But if you are capable of feeling like you can be in the playoffs every single year and your quarterback's not part of the problem, that's worth something. Like being in that level of relevance, because a couple things go right and maybe you're all the way there. But even when you got one of the 5 best quarterbacks in the league, you aren't guaranteed to get to the Super Bowl every year.
We've seen that. Well, my shameless plug, I wrote about pretty much every option that's on the table at quarterback, because that should consume the team this offseason. And one of the guys, obviously I wrote about Dalton and Winston in there. It sure feels like they've decided to move on from Winston. I think Dalton could very well be on this team next year, hopefully paired with something else, paired with the young developmental prospect or the lottery ticket. There's a lot of interesting lottery tickets. The one really interesting thing about this offseason at quarterback is the supply. There's going to be more supply, which is there's going to be guys shaking out somewhere. When 4 guys get drafted in the top 15 picks, that means 4 more guys. I'm not saying I'm excited about Sam Darnold or Zach Wilson or Gardner Minshew, who I kind of wanted to take a look, but the same thing that is the philosophy behind draft someone in round 2 or round 3 every year. Pick up one of those guys that's like, didn't lost the game of musical chairs and take a look at him. I like what the Saints did with Teddy Bridgewater and Jameis Winston. Neither one became the long-term answer, but that's another route to maybe finding somebody who eventually is. So
I like acquiring those guys as backups and having them around. High-end backups, guys that you can kind of rehabilitate a little bit. I mean, look, Teddy comes in because your starter's going to get hurt. They're going to go in a game. If they perform well, you might get back more than you invested in them. Anyhow, you get a pick. Like they're probably going to get more for Gardner. They traded a 6 for him. If somebody signs him and he ends up starting, they're going to get more back for him than they put into him. And it's just a smart move. I think if you like somebody's backup quarterback, you should be making calls and saying, hey, what do you want for him? Because if you can give that 6 for him and he plays well, and he signs somewhere, you might get a 3rd. Yeah. It's just the easiest way to
play that
to kind of buy. Yeah, absolutely.
Be in that business,
and
without
then
question.
What if they actually develop more in your system and they actually become good and they fit and it's just kind of, someone clicks to a system and it's perfect for them. All of a sudden they're a good player. Like Ryan Tannehill kind of had like a big glow up because their system fit him more than it fit.
He's the
Miami.
Dream scenario. He's kind of the dream scenario for what we're talking about. When he flamed out a little in Miami, Tennessee got him cheap. He became. They didn't pay him right away, though. They didn't. They paid him after he blew up. Yeah. The Saints would have been happy to do that with Jameis Winston or Teddy if they had worked out. The thing I like about Minshew is I feel like out of all the names, I feel like he's the one that would generate some fan excitement. Maybe polarizing, but I think thered be like a Minshew mania element to it, and we need excitement this offseason.
I would rather have Derek Carr than Gardner Minshew excitement, honestly. Like, because I feel like Carr's going to win you game. Like, whatever they do moving forward, they have to win. Like, there's no option. Like, all of a sudden, the season ticket list is going to start dwindling, and they might have to start making calls to sell individual game tickets.
They don't have
to
win
point.
If they have, like, I mean, if there was any element where the Sean Payton pick and they traded up and they ended up
that's
with
different.
Will Levis or whatever, then that would work too.
That's different. Yeah,
that's what we all want. It's just really hard if you're a team that isn't picking in the top 10. And the Saints, to their credit, don't pick in the top 10 a lot. They should be possibly this year. But
all right. So last topic. This is Mike brought it to the table.
I brought it to the table for a reason, because this game is in Philly, and Nick, this is your favorite road trip? Is this your favorite road trip in the NFL?
It's the only road trip I like. It's the only road trip I like. Wow. Yeah. Look, I mean, I'm hashtag business trip guy. I'm in here. I go in. I'm covering a game. I'm doing my work.
You lead the league and staying in airport hotels.
Yeah, we're eating in the lobby. We're watching college football. We're going to the game, and then we're usually this is gonna sound stupid to say. Like, I'm not flexing. We just do a lot at the games. We're usually the last people out of there.
That's because I take too long.
Yeah,
you're ready for it.
And we do a podcast. Ross Jackson is always fighting us to be the last guy out of there too. Shout out to Ross. But yeah, so there isn't like a lot of like sightseeing. So it's kind of eating in the hotel, eating somewhere nearby the stadium, going back to the hotel, catching a flight, coming home. So that's it. Philly though, for me, it's like being basically in the movie set of the greatest piece of cinema masterpiece of all time, Rocky, all of them.
You go to see the statue every time?
Not every time, but like everywhere you go, it's a scene from Rocky.
Yeah.
Like basically, like there's a place. So, you know, there's the sights. It's kind of seeing all the Rocky things. I like Baltimore too because I like doing the Wire tour. But yeah, Rocky's just kind of basically everywhere. So that's one. Two, the cheesesteak is the greatest culinary achievement of humankind if you order it right and you go to the right places. So
do you have the people are going there this weekend?
Yeah, they can hit me up on Twitter. I'll send them. I'll hook them up. And then, you know, three, that my little you know, rap aficionado. Philly's a great rap city. You got Beanie Siegel, Freeway, Meek, you know, so there's just kind of some stuff there. You know, I do my little rap tours every now and then in these places where it's significant enough. So those are kind of, you know, the three things for me.
So there you go, everyone. Nick's influence with the league is why the Saints play at Philadelphia every year. Thank Nick.
What's yours?
Personally, like I used to live in San Francisco. I lived in downtown San Francisco for 3 years. I covered the 49ers a lifetime ago before I moved to Louisiana. So I always like going back there, although hashtag business trip this time. I just flew into the Santa Clara, stayed in the airport hotel, left 24 hours later. So I'd be lying. I like, and maybe because it doesn't come up every year, I like the DC trip. I like to go for like runs when I'm in a different city or whatever. And I love running around. Like, I mean, that's just like a historic place to run around and you see some really cool stuff. And especially like now that I'm at the age where I take my kids, like, we did in New York City one time where we zipped around New York City for that weekend. I'm going to take them the next time they play at DC. I don't know when it's going to come. And we'd probably be cheating if we added the AFC things because they're more special because we only go there once every 8 years. Like I wish we went to Denver every year. I like that trip. Yeah, I'm an outdoors. I like the outdoors.
Yeah, I'm not going for a hike. Like I'm there for work. Like it's not a vacation for me.
Yeah, but no, you're the advisor. You've sampled these cities. If these people are like, I can afford one road trip over the next 4 years, what should I save up for?
I mean, I would probably do, you know, I would do Green Bay. Like it's like all I really see is
Green Bay's coming up on the schedule this year.
All I see is like really the football aspect of it. Like that's one of the best places to watch a game. Like that would be my main thing. You know, like as far as like, well, you can do this, and this. Like I'm not out there like, you know, I'm not going to see the Liberty Bell. Like you know, I'm not there for that. Like if I went there on a trip, I would do that. But for work, no. Like it isn't. It just isn't for me.
All right,
it's usually like easy meal. Like I'm not out like looking on Yelp like for the 5-star review restaurant. Like it's just like, oh, there's a Chipotle. Like let's go to Chipotle. You know what I mean? Like I'm not there with Sue. Like if I was there with Sue,
at Chipotle in Tampa. As a matter of fact, like on the Tampa road trip.
Like my other problem is like that I don't want to like experience things without my wife. Like, you know what I mean? Like, so like, I'm not out like, oh, like I want to see this museum. Like,
that's the question. What's the trip Sue's going to want to come with you on? London.
Yeah. Went to London. That was great. I mean, that's London. I don't know. Like, I don't really know. I haven't really thought about it.
It's not the NFC South. That's for sure.
Well, yeah. I mean, I don't need to go to Atlanta again. I'm good. Yeah. All right. Is that all we got?
That's it, man.
All right. Well, we'll just end it there. I got nothing to say.